On the rainy morning I was set to face my own son in family court, I helped a stranger on the bus. When we arrived at the courthouse, my daughter-in-law didn't just turn pale seeing him standing next to me. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. That terrified look on her face told me everything I needed to know. The game was finally over, and the fuse was already lit. It turns out that gentleman was, well, I know you are wondering who that man was, but before I reveal that, I need you to understand one thing. Sometimes a single gesture of kindness can trigger a chain reaction that changes absolutely everything. And on that rainy March morning, when I extended my hand to help a stranger, I had no idea I was about to uncover secrets that would completely destroy the lie my life had become. If you want to know how a simple bus fare of $2.75 can expose years of deceit, listen closely, because this story will leave you breathless until the very last second. Let me take you back to that moment. It is 10 o'clock in the morning. I am standing in front of the County Superior Court, soaked by the fine rain that has not stopped falling since dawn. My old black umbrella, the one with the wooden handle that belonged to my late husband, is crooked, leaking water down the right side. My hands are trembling. I do not know if it is from the cold or the nerves. Beside me stands the gentleman I met on the bus less than an hour ago. Mr. Robert Miller, he said his name was. White hair perfectly combed back, an impeccable gray suit, even after the rain. He has brown eyes that carry an ancient sadness. He insisted on walking me here. He says he knows this place well, that he worked here for 40 years as a lawyer. Something in his voice calmed me. But now, seeing my son David standing under the awning of the main entrance, right next to her, my stomach turns. Vanessa is flawless, as always. Beige dress slacks, a light pink silk blouse, that straight blonde hair falling perfectly over her shoulders. She is scrolling on her phone, probably posting another photo of the perfect life she built on the ruins of my home. David sees me first. He opens his mouth to say something, but then his eyes drift to the man beside me. I see the confusion on my son's face. Who is this man? Why is he with his mother? But it is Vanessa who really reacts. She lifts her face from the glowing screen of her cell phone and freezes. Literally freezes. The device slips from her fingers and hits the wet pavement with a dull thud. Her pupils dilate. Her face, always so controlled, always so composed, loses all its color. She turns the color of the white courthouse walls behind her. "No," she whispers. It is almost inaudible, but I hear it. It is not possible. Mr. Miller takes a step forward. He does not smile, but there is something in his posture, a kind of unshakable dignity, that makes me understand that this meeting is no accident. It is destiny correcting itself. "Hello, Vanessa," he says. His voice is firm, calm, but carries the weight of years of pain. "It has been a while since we have seen each other, hasn't it? 8 years, if I am not mistaken, since you left me in that facility." Vanessa backs up a step. Her back hits the wall. She shakes her head frantically, as if she could make the man disappear just by denying his existence. "You are dead," she stammers. "You are dead. I saw the certificate. "You forged the certificate," Mr. Miller completes her sentence. "Just as you forged so many other documents over the years, my daughter." The word drops like a bomb. Daughter. I look at the man beside me, then at Vanessa, then back at him. My brain takes a few seconds to process. This man, this gentle gentleman who paid for my fare with the last loose change he had in his pocket, who insisted on walking with me because no one should face the court alone. Is he her father? David finally reacts. "What are you talking about? Vanessa, you told me your father had—" "Died?" interrupts Mr. Miller, turning to my son. "Is that what she told you? That I was dead?" Interesting. Because when she forcibly committed me to that clandestine nursing home in Spokane, a place with no license, no oversight, where the elderly were sedated and forgotten, she also told the administration that I had no more family, that no one would visit me, that she was my only kin, and that if I died, she should be notified immediately to handle the assets. Each word from him is a revelation. Each sentence dismantles years of lies. Vanessa tries to speak, but only broken sounds come out of her mouth. She looks for David with her eyes, silently begging for help. My son is paralyzed, looking between his wife and that man as if he were watching a horror movie. But what I do not understand, I continue, finding my voice for the first time since we arrived, is how you survived, how you got here. Mr. Miller turns to me. The genuine gratitude in his eyes is heartbreaking. A brave social worker reported the place 7 months ago. When the police raided it, they found 17 seniors in inhumane conditions. I was one of them. It took time to recover, to gather strength, to collect the proof of what my daughter had done. But I managed. And today, he pauses, looking directly at Vanessa, today I came seeking justice, not just for me, but for all the others she destroyed along the way. He pulls a brown envelope from the inside pocket of his jacket. The paper is slightly damp from the rain, but the documents inside seem intact. And something tells me, Susan, he turns to me again, that you and I have a lot to talk about regarding my daughter. In that moment, with the rain falling around us, with Vanessa cornered against the wall and David in total shock, I understood that this family court hearing was going to be very different from what any of us had imagined. Because sometimes the truth does not show up when you expect it. It appears when you least imagine it, in the form of a soaked gentleman asking for help on a crowded bus. And what happened inside that courtroom? Well, you are going to find out. But before that, I need to tell you how I got there, because no story starts in the middle. And mine started 3 years earlier, on a Sunday night, when my son rang the doorbell and said, "Mom, there is someone I want you to meet." Want to know how this all started? Stay with me. The story is just beginning. 3 years before that rainy morning at the courthouse, my life was different. Not perfect. It was never perfect after I lost my Frank to a massive heart attack. But it was mine. I had my routine, my house, my independence. And I had my son close by, even if he was rebuilding his own life after losing Sarah in a car accident. It was a Sunday in April. I remember the smell of rosemary roasting in the oven with the meat. I had prepared pot roast with potatoes, that recipe David had loved since he was a boy. He had called earlier, saying he wanted to have dinner with me, that he had important news. His voice sounded soft. It had been a long time since I heard that softness. When the doorbell rang at 7 o'clock at night, I dried my hands on my apron and went to answer. David was at the gate, smiling in that half-shy way of his, and beside him, her, Vanessa Sampaio. I only discovered the full name later, of course, but in that first moment, what struck me was her appearance. I am not going to lie. She was beautiful. Black hair, straight, down to the middle of her back, so perfect it looked like it came out of a shampoo commercial. Artificially tanned skin, impeccable French tips. She wore light jeans that must have cost more than my electric bill, and a white blouse of fine fabric with a delicate gold necklace at her neck. She extended her hand to me with a smile that showed teeth that were too white. "Susan, it is an honor to finally meet you. David talks so much about you." The voice was smooth, polite, but there was something in her eyes, light brown, almost honey-colored, that did not match the smile. It was as if she was measuring, evaluating me, calculating my worth. I shook her hand, cold. Even on warm April nights, that hand was cold. Come in, dinner is ready," I said, trying to ignore that knot in my stomach. My instinct was telling me something, but I did not want to ruin my son's happiness. During dinner, Vanessa was the personification of the perfect daughter-in-law. She praised the decoration of the living room, the cream linen curtains, the brown velvet sofa that Frank and I bought 20 years ago, the paintings of countryside landscapes. She admired my collection of cobalt blue porcelain cups that I inherited from my mother, each with a different flower design. "What a beautiful heirloom, Susan. They are antique, aren't they? They must have a lot of value." She ran her fingers delicately along the rim of one of them, as if evaluating the weight, the quality. Sentimental value, I replied, taking the cup back and placing it carefully in the china cabinet. They were my mother's. She got them at her wedding. She brought them from Portugal. Vanessa smiled. I understand. It is important to keep the things that matter, right? One day, all this stays for the family. The phrase sounded strange, very specific, very presumptuous for someone I had just met. But David was radiant. He was holding her hand across the table. He looked at her as if he had found light after years in the dark. And as a mother, even feeling that growing discomfort, I wanted him to be happy. You know that feeling when you ignore the red flags because you are desperate for everything to be okay? That was me. And that was my first mistake. When I served the key lime pie for dessert, Vanessa practically sighed with pleasure at the first bite. This is divine. Susan, you have to give me this recipe. David deserves to eat these delights at home, too. She winked at him, then turned to me. I want to take good care of him, you know. Do everything you do with the same affection. It sounded like a compliment, but it felt like a replacement. After dinner, while David went to the bathroom, Vanessa stayed with me in the kitchen. She offered to help wash the dishes. I refused, saying I had a dishwasher, but she insisted on at least drying. That was when she started asking questions. The house is just yours, right? David mentioned that Mr. Frank left everything in your name. Casual, like someone asking about the weather. Yes, Frank insisted. He said I had to have security. What a prudent man. She folded the dish towel with precise movements. And it is a big house for one person alone, isn't it? 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, this huge backyard. I like the space. I have my memories here. Of course, memories are important. Pause. But it must be a lot of work, maintenance, cleaning, bills. Can you handle everything alone? Each question was a disguised jab. Testing, measuring, looking for weaknesses. I manage, yes, and David always helps me with what I need. Her smile wavered for a fraction of a second. Ah, yes, he is very attentive. Actually, about that, you know he deposits $800 for you every month, right? My blood froze. How did she know the exact amount? Had David told her? Why? He told me. She continued, as if reading my thoughts. I think it is important that couples have no secrets about money. And look, don't get me wrong. I think it is sweet that he takes care of his mother. But we are planning our future together now, you know? Marriage? Who knows? Children. And every dollar counts. She had just met my house, my food, my cups, and was already calculating how much my son spent on me. When they left that night, I stayed on the porch watching the car disappear down the street. The smell of rosemary was still in the air, but there was another smell, too, something too sweet, cloying. Her perfume had stayed impregnated on the porch sofa where she sat. I went in, opened the windows to air it out, took that cushion and shook it hard, as if I could also shake off the bad feeling that had remained, because I knew. Even without being able to explain, even without wanting to believe, something inside me, that mother's instinct we develop after years of caring for someone, was shouting and alert. That woman had not entered my house looking for love. She had entered looking for an inventory, and in the following months, I was going to discover that my instinct was right. But it would be too late. What was Vanessa planning from day one? Stay with me to find out how a snake camouflages itself until the moment it strikes. 6 months. That was the time it took between that dinner and the wedding. 6 months for Vanessa to convince my son that they needed to make it official soon. Because when you find the right person, why wait? 6 months for her to transform my son's grief into emotional dependency. 6 months for me to become the annoying mother who doesn't want to see her son happy. When David called me saying he had set the wedding for December, I felt that tightness in my chest again. I tried to disguise the worry. But son, you two don't know each other well. Wouldn't it be better to wait a little longer? Get to know the families better. Make plans. Mom, I already lost too much time after Sarah left. Vanessa made me want to live again. I need this. I need her. His voice had an urgency that scared me, as if Vanessa was oxygen and he was drowning without her. I wanted to say so many things. I wanted to talk about those invasive questions, about the way she looked at my house like someone making a mental budget. But the words died in my throat. Because when you question too much, you become the villain of the story, and I didn't want to lose my son. The wedding happened on a Saturday afternoon in a small hall near downtown. Vanessa insisted on an intimate ceremony, only close family, nothing extravagant, because we are saving for our future. It was me, 2 distant cousins of David's, and 3 friends of hers, flawless women, with expensive clothes and empty smiles. The wedding dress, $5,000. I saw the receipt forgotten on the back seat of the car when David gave me a ride the week before. $5,000 on a dress for a ceremony of 20 people. But they were saving money. On the wedding day, Vanessa was stunning. The dress was French lace, tight on the body, short train, hair tied in a sophisticated low bun, impeccable makeup. She looked like she had stepped out of a magazine. I wore a simple moss green dress I had in the closet. I didn't want to buy anything new. Maybe out of stubbornness, maybe out of a premonition that I would need to save every penny. During the party, Vanessa barely said 3 words to me. She was busy taking photos for social media, posing with her friends, receiving congratulations. When they announced the cake, she and David cut it together, smiling for the cameras. No one called me for the traditional photo with the bride and groom. They simply forgot me. I sat at my table, fiddling with the paper napkin, feeling invisible at my own son's party. It was one of her friends, Tatiana, a tall brunette in red stiletto heels, who came up to me at the end of the night. "You are David's mother, aren't you?" She was slightly tipsy, leaning on the table. "Poor thing." I looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" "Ah, nothing, no." She gave a bitter little laugh. "It's just that I saw you have a history. Well, never mind. You will find out on your own." And she walked away stumbling before I could ask more. Those words kept echoing in my head all night. 3 weeks later, the first knife struck. I was in the kitchen preparing Sunday lunch, a tradition we kept forever, when David arrived, alone. Vanessa had an unavoidable appointment, according to him. But my son was different, restless, checking his cell phone every 5 minutes, avoiding my gaze. "Son, did something happen?" He took a deep breath, put the phone away, and said the sentence that would split our relationship down the middle. "Mom, we need to talk about money." My stomach sank. Vanessa and I are organizing our financial life. Spreadsheets, investments, those things. And, well, we think, that the $800 I deposit for you every month is a lot. Each word was a stab. "A lot," I repeated, trying to process. "David, I received $1,200 from Social Security. With that money you help me with, I pay the bills, buy groceries, maintain the house. You know that." "I know, Mom, but Vanessa raised a valid point. You have a paid-off house, no rent. You have Social Security, no small children to support. Why do you need so much money?" "So much money?" My voice came out louder than I intended. "David, it is $800. You make over $10,000 a month at the firm." "Exactly. And now I have a wife. We have joint bills. We want to buy a bigger apartment, maybe have children. I saw she wants to go back to school, do a post-grad. All that costs money." I looked at my son, that 43-year-old man I raised alone after Frank died, who I helped get through college, who I took in when he lost Sarah, and I didn't recognize who was in front of me. "So you come here to tell me that your wife of 3 weeks is more important than your mother?" "It isn't that, Mom. It's just that you already had your life, built your house, raised your son. Now it is my turn to build my family. And for that, I need to prioritize my wife." "You already had your life." Those words burned more than any slap. I took a deep breath, trying to control the tears that threatened to fall. I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction because I knew every word he said had Vanessa's finger on it, the satisfaction of seeing me cry. "All right, son, you are an adult, make your choices. But let me tell you something. That money was always about care, not obligation. Your father left that tradition. He said taking care of those who took care of us was a matter of honor. But if your wife doesn't understand that—" I paused. Maybe she doesn't understand what family really means. David turned red. "Don't talk like that about Vanessa. She is just thinking about our future, or her future." I blurted out before I could control myself. He stood up from the chair abruptly. "I knew you were going to react like this. Vic said you would. She said you always thought no one was good enough for me." And he left. He left the full plate on the table, the food getting cold, and walked out. I stayed there, alone in the kitchen, listening to the sound of the gate slamming. I looked at that table, the 2 empty chairs, the platter of rice still steaming, the pitcher of passion fruit juice no one touched. And it was in that moment I understood. Vanessa wasn't just stealing my son's money. She was stealing my son from me. And that was just the first knife. The next ones would be even deeper. Stay with me, because the worst was yet to come. 1 year. That was the time it took Vanessa to turn my son into a complete stranger. At first, it was small things. David canceled our Tuesday morning coffee, a tradition we kept since he moved out. "Sorry, Mom. Vic scheduled a dentist appointment, and I need to take her." Then it was the Sunday lunch. "We are going to travel to the beach and enjoy the holiday." And then it was the calls. "Hello, Mom. I can't talk right now. I am in the middle of something." Every time I called, the one who answered was Vanessa. "Hi, Susan. David is in the bathroom. He is resting. He had an exhausting day. He is watching the game. Better not interrupt." Her voice always polite, always controlled, but with that subtext, he doesn't want to talk to you. When I insisted, she said he would call back. The call never came. And when it came, days later, David sounded irritated. "Mom, stop calling so much." "I call when I can." Me calling so much? Me who waited days for a call from him? But the real poison was distilled at family gatherings. My cousin Hector turned 70 in August. The whole family gathered at his place in the country. Barbecue grill fired up, kids running on the grass, country music in the garden. I was talking to my cousin Dadova about her vegetable garden when David and Vanessa arrived. She wore a very short floral dress, thin high heels that sank into the grass, completely inappropriate for a farm, but perfect for getting attention. "Susan!" she called me loudly, crossing the lawn with that glued-on smile. "Dearest mother-in-law, long time no see." She hugged me with that theatrical hug, cloying perfume invading my nose. Then she pulled away and looked me up and down. "Wow, you lost weight, didn't you? Are you eating well?" Strategic pause. Being alone is hard, right? We end up letting ourselves go. "I worry about you in that huge house making food just for yourself." Dalva frowned but said nothing. During lunch, I sat at the big table with the rest of the family. Vanessa sat next to me. Not out of affection, I realized later, but out of strategy. Every time I started to tell a story, she interrupted me. I was talking about when David was little and ran out of the backyard to chase the ice cream truck. And then I ran barefoot down the street shouting, Susan, let me correct you." Vanessa placed her hand on my arm, squeezing lightly. "David told me this story the other day. He didn't run away. You got distracted and didn't notice him leaving. He could have been run over. It was the neighbor who caught him, not you." My face burned. "No, It's just that your memory sometimes gets confused about things, right? Normal for your age." She smiled at the whole table. "It happens with my grandmother, too. She invents such stories." My cousin Hector looked at me with pity. Pity, as if I were a senile old woman who could no longer distinguish reality from fantasy. I couldn't eat anything else. The lump in my throat was too big. But the worst came later, when we went back into the house to get dessert. Vanessa went into the room where Hector kept his antique furniture, a rosewood dresser, a wall clock from 1940, some silver picture frames. She started picking up each piece, turning it over, checking for marks, appraising. "Vanessa, what are you doing?" I asked her. "Oh, just admiring the antiques. Your cousin has good taste." She picked up a heavy picture frame, Sterling silver must be worth about $2,000 at least. That belongs to him. Don't go touching other people's things. She laughed. Relax, Susan. I'm just looking. By the way, she turned to me with that smile that didn't reach her eyes. Speaking of antiques, when you pass away one day, many years from now, of course, those blue cups you have, who will they go to? To David, right? After all, he is an only child. When you pass away. The slip was on purpose. I know it was. The cups go to whoever I want to leave them to, I replied, holding back my anger. Of course. But thinking about it, you live alone in that big house. Have you thought about if something happens? A fall, a sudden illness. It would be a shame, all that property tax, light, water, all running without anyone using it. It is such a waste. Before I could answer, my cousin Dalva came into the room. Susan, I left a piece of carrot cake aside for you. Come get it before it runs out. I left there trembling. Not from cold, from indignation. But what happened 3 weeks later was the final straw. Sunday morning, David showed up at my house without warning, with Vanessa, and with a man in a suit I didn't know. Mom, this is Maurice. He is a real estate agent. My heart raced. Real estate agent? What for? Vanessa stepped forward, walking into the living room as if she owned the place. She started walking through the rooms, opening doors, measuring spaces with her eyes. It's just that we had an idea, Susan. You are always complaining that this house is big, that it is work to clean, that you get lonely. I never complained about that. Not directly, she continued, ignoring my interruption. But we noticed, and look, we thought of a perfect solution. You sell this house. Maurice appraised it at $750,000, and you buy a smaller apartment, more modern, 24-hour concierge, more security. You can find something very good for $350,000, and you have $400,000 left over that you can invest, yield a little extra money every month. Each word was a punch. This house is not for sale. David took a step forward. Mom, think about it. You are almost 70. Have you thought about if you fall, get hurt, and are alone here, with no one to help? I have you, I replied, looking directly at him. Or did I? He looked away. Maurice, the realtor, opened a folder. Miss Susan, I already have some apartments that— Get out of my house! My voice came out low, dangerous. Get out of my house right now! The silence was heavy. Vanessa let out a nervous little laugh. Susan, no need for that. I said, now. They left. Maurice first, embarrassed. Vanessa next, rolling her eyes. And lastly, David, who looked at me with disappointment as if I were the guilty one. When the door closed, my legs failed. I sat on the floor, right there in the hallway, hugging my knees. And I cried. I cried because I realized I had lost my son. And worse, he didn't even realize he was lost. But if you think that was rock bottom, you are mistaken. The true nightmare was just beginning. 3 months after that argument about selling the house, I thought I had won. I thought they had given up. David barely called, but at least he didn't show up with realtors anymore. What an idiot I was. On a Thursday in November at 9:40 in the morning, the doorbell rang. It was a courier with a cardboard envelope. I signed for it with that neutral curiosity of someone who thinks it is some overdue bill or notice from the city. I opened the envelope, still standing in the entryway, and my world collapsed. Notice of property sale. Process number D-4728-2023. My hands started to shake so much the papers almost fell to the floor. I read it once, twice, 3 times. The words danced in front of me, refusing to make sense. My house. My house. The house Frank and I bought 32 years ago, where I raised my son, where every piece of furniture held a memory, was in the process of being sold to a company called Miller and Silvera Enterprises, LLC. Value, $720,000, $170,000 below market value. And the supposed seller, me, Susan Eleonora Mendez. But I had never signed anything, never authorized anything, never heard of this company. I sat on the hallway floor, the envelope lying beside me, trying to breathe. My chest was tight, vision blurry. I felt a bitter taste in my mouth, pure distilled fear. I grabbed the phone with trembling hands and called David. I called 6 times. It went to voicemail. I called again and again. On the 5th attempt, he answered, annoyed. "Mom, I am working." "David, someone is trying to steal my house." Silence. "What are you talking about?" "I received a notice from the notary saying my house is being sold. It has documents, signatures, powers of attorney, but I didn't sign anything." Another silence. Longer. Heavier. "Are you sure you didn't sign? Didn't you receive any dispatcher? Any? David, I know what I sign and what I don't sign." Okay, calm down. I'll see what I can find out. Then I'll call you." And he hung up. I stood there, holding the silent phone, feeling absolutely alone. I didn't wait for him to call back. I took my purse, the documents, and went straight to the legal aid clinic to find a public defender. I needed a lawyer. I needed help. In the line, which lasted 4 hours, I read every word of those accursed papers. There was a power of attorney with my signature, forged but notarized at the Borges Notary Public on the west side. There was a buyer, that Miller and Silvera company. It had everything. It was a clean, organized, professional process. Someone had planned this down to the smallest details. When I was finally seen, the legal aid lawyer, a young woman, tired, with piles of cases on her desk, looked at my documents with a grave expression. "Ms. Susan, this is fraud, forgery of public documents. We are going to file an urgent injunction, ask to block the sale, an investigation." She paused. "But I need to be honest. These cases take time, and in the meantime, you cannot sell, mortgage, or do anything with the property. It is frozen." "But it is my house." "I know, but until we prove the signature is fake, that there was a crime, the judicial process drags on. It can take months, even years." Years. I left there feeling defeated, but there was something I couldn't get out of my head. Miller and Silvera. The surname Miller. I got home and did what I should have done sooner. I Googled the company name and found out. Miller and Silvera Enterprises LLC Partners. Vanessa Sampaio Miller and Richard Silvera Miller. Richard Silvera Miller, her brother. Her brother, whom she never mentioned, who never appeared at the wedding, who was a ghost. My daughter-in-law was trying to steal my house through a shell company. I called David 17 times. He didn't answer any of them. So I called Vanessa's number, which I had saved but never used. She answered on the second ring. Voice sweet, calm. "Hello?" "You!" My voice came out cracked from holding back tears. "You forged my signature. You tried to steal my house." Laughter. A soft laugh, almost amused. "Oh, Susan, are you okay? You seem confused. I have the proof. The company is yours. Your name is on the documents." "Documents that you signed yourself, dear, remember? You came here to the house 2 months ago. You signed some papers David asked for. They were to organize your succession, simplify things, in case something happened to you." "I never went to your house." "Ah, but you did. You even had coffee with me, orange cake. You praised it." Her voice was calm, controlled, sadistic. "You know what I think, Susan? I think you are forgetting things. Senile. You sign documents and then don't remember. It is sad, but it happens to old people." My blood froze. "I am going to sue you. I am going to put you in jail." "With what money, Susan? You can barely pay your bills. And when the judge sees that you are alleging things without sense, accusing your own son's wife of theft, well, they are going to think you really need psychiatric help. Who knows, maybe even a conservatorship, right? To protect you from yourself." She hung up. And I understood. She wasn't just stealing my house. She was destroying me from the inside, making me doubt my own sanity, isolating me, turning me into the crazy woman of the story. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dark living room, looking at the walls, at the furniture, at every corner of that space that was my only refuge in the world. And for the first time in 68 years of life, I thought about giving up. Giving up the house, giving up the fight, giving up everything. Because when you fight alone against someone who has money, influence, and your own son on their side, how are you going to win? But if I had given up in that moment, you wouldn't be hearing this story now, because the worst was yet to come. And it was that worst that paradoxically saved me. The lawsuit dragged on like a slug, leaving a trail of salt. First came the handwriting analysis, the check of the forged signature. It took 2 months just to schedule. Then another month for the result to come out. Inconclusive. Possible tampering, but needs supplementary analysis. In other words, they said nothing. Meanwhile, my house was blocked. I couldn't sell it. I couldn't use it as collateral for anything. I was a prisoner of my own assets. And Vanessa. Vanessa attacked from another angle. In January, 2 months after the notary notification, I received a court summons that made my world collapse once and for all. Petition for conservatorship. Petitioner, Vanessa Sampaio Miller. Respondent, Susan Eleonora Mendez. Reason, civil incapacity due to progressive senile dementia. She was trying to declare me crazy, incapable of managing my own life. I read that in the waiting room of the courthouse, waiting to speak to my public defender. The words blurred in front of me. Progressive senile dementia. Incapacity for discernment. Episodes of mental confusion and memory loss. She had attached reports. Reports from 3 different psychologists I had never consulted in my life. Dr. Mariana Costa, Dr. Robert Alcantara, Dr. Simone Freitas. Names I didn't know. People who had never entered my house, never spoken to me. And all 3 said the same thing. The patient presents clear signs of cognitive deterioration. Partial interdiction is recommended for the protection of her own well-being. They were fake, all fake. But they were there, stamped, signed, with professional license numbers. Someone had paid for those documents. Someone had bought my sanity. The worst part? In the process, there was a list of witnesses in favor of the conservatorship, and the first name was David Henry Mendez, my son. My son had signed a document saying I was crazy. When I got home that day, I couldn't go in. I stood at the gate holding those cursed papers, feeling my body shake from head to toe. My legs gave way. I sat on the sidewalk right there in front of the house and let the tears fall. A neighbor, Ms. Carmen, who lived 3 houses down, passed by and asked if I was okay. I couldn't answer. I just shook my head. She moved away quickly, looking at me with that expression I was starting to recognize. Pity mixed with discomfort. Pity for the crazy old woman having a breakdown on the sidewalk. Because Vanessa had done her job right, she had spread rumors. In the church group, someone commented that I was having problems. At the bakery, the attendant looked at me with that caution of someone dealing with an unpredictable person. The embroidery friends stopped calling me for the bi-weekly meetings. I had become the crazy lady of the street. And the isolation hurts more than any lawsuit. I started losing weight, not because I was on a diet, but because I couldn't eat. The food wouldn't go down. It was stuck in my throat along with all the despair I couldn't express. 25 pounds in 2 months. My clothes became baggy. The pants fell from my waist. I had to make new holes in my belt. 1, 2, 3 holes. My face became gaunt, deep circles under my eyes. My hair turned white faster, falling out in clumps in the shower. The nights were the worst. I would lie down at 10, but sleep wouldn't come. I stared at the ceiling, at the shadows the streetlight cast through the curtain. My brain wouldn't shut off. I went over and over every conversation, every document, every look of disappointment from David. Where had I gone wrong? How had I let that woman destroy everything? Why had my son abandoned me? At 3 in the morning, I would get up, walk through the dark house, sit in the kitchen chair. I looked at the fridge, which used to be full, and now held only some wilted fruit and a tub of butter. Some nights, I would take those cobalt blue porcelain cups my mother left me. I ran my fingers over the delicate rims, feeling their weight, the hand-painted flowers. Each one had a story. The one with white hydrangeas was her favorite. The one with yellow lilies was an anniversary gift from my father. And I thought, Vanessa wants this here too. She wants even my memories. In March, David finally showed up. Without warning, without calling first. He just rang the doorbell on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the backyard trying to pull some weeds, something to keep my hands busy, my mind distracted. I opened the gate, and he was there. Thinner, too. Dark circles, unshaven beard. "Hi, Mom." "Hi." We stood there with an abyss of silence between us. "I came because Vanessa asked me to talk to you about the conservatorship." Each word was a knife. "She isn't bad, Mom. She just wants to protect you." Those episodes of confusion, those baseless accusations. Episodes of confusion. My voice came out low, dangerous. "David, look at me. Look at me. Do I look crazy? Do I look confused?" He looked away. "You lost a lot of weight. You aren't taking care of the house well. The plants in the yard are dying. Your appearance." "My appearance?" I laughed, a bitter laugh, without humor. "Son, I lost weight because I can't eat while the woman you married tries to rob me. The plants are dying because I spend my nights awake defending myself from false accusations. And you signed a paper calling me crazy." "It wasn't like that. I just confirmed that you have been acting different." "Different how, huh? Different because I didn't hand over my house on a silver platter? Different because I dare to question your perfect wife?" David swallowed hard. "Vanessa showed me messages from you. Confusing, repeated, senseless messages. She showed me lies." I exploded. "She showed you lies? David, I barely have WhatsApp. How am I going to send confusing messages if I barely use the phone?" He stayed silent. But it wasn't a silence of doubt. It was the silence of someone who has already chosen their side and doesn't want to be bothered with the truth. "I came here to ask you to accept help. Accept that you need supervision. Make things easier. If you fight against this, it will get worse." "Worse? Worse?" My voice cracked. "David, she is trying to declare me incompetent, take everything from me, my house, my dignity, my sanity, and you are on her side." "I am on my wife's side," he shouted back. "As it should be. You never accepted her, never gave her a chance." "I gave her every chance. I welcomed her into my house, made food, tried to get close, and she only wanted to know how much everything in here was worth." David stepped back, as if my words were physical. "You are sick, Mom, and I'm not going to stand here listening to this." And he left. For the second time, I heard the gate slam, but this time it was different. Because this time I understood I had truly lost my son, and I was completely alone in this war. I was at rock bottom, without strength, without hope, without allies. But it was precisely in that moment of total darkness that an unexpected light appeared. Stay with me. April arrived, bringing another bomb. This time it was a court officer who knocked on the door. Serious man, noon, unbearable heat. He handed me a notice and asked me to sign the receipt. I did it automatically, like a robot programmed to accept blows. I closed the door. I opened the envelope with fingers that didn't even tremble anymore. I'd passed the point of fear. I was in the numb zone. Order of protection / restraining order. Case 8.8.34.2024. Petitioners, David Henry Mendez and Vanessa Sampaio Miller. Respondent, Susan Eleonora Mendez. I read it 3 times until I could process the meaning of those words. My son was suing me. Not for conservatorship. That was still running in parallel. This was different. Worse. He was asking for a court order to forbid me from disturbing him, contacting him, or appearing at his residence without prior authorization. It was a divorce. A divorce of mother and son formalized injustice. The justification? The obsessive and invasive behavior of the respondent, who insists on unwanted contacts, appears without notice at the petitioner's residence, and makes unfounded accusations that generate psychological suffering. I read that sitting on the living room sofa, the same sofa where David slept when he had nightmares at 6 years old, the same sofa where he studied for school exams, the same sofa where he cried in his arms when Frank died. And now he accused me of being a disturbance in his life. It had attachments, call logs. Yes, I had called 17 times on that day I found out about the Miller and Silvera company. It had reports from neighbors saying the old lady constantly appears at her son's house causing a scene. It even had a photo of me, taken from afar, without knowing, standing in front of his apartment looking lost. I had gone there only once, 3 weeks ago, desperate to talk to David. He wasn't there. Vanessa told me he didn't want to see me and slammed the door in my face. I stood there, not knowing what to do, trying to gather courage to ring the doorbell again. And someone had taken a photo. Someone had documented my desperation to use against me. The hearing was set for March 19th, a Wednesday, just 15 days away. I would have to appear at the Central County Court, sit in a room in front of a judge, and defend myself from the accusation of being an inconvenient mother. That night, I did something I hadn't done in decades. I took the bottle of wine that was in the back of the cabinet since the last Christmas dinner with Frank. I poured a glass, then another, and another. I didn't get drunk. My body was so exhausted it just got more numb. I sat on the kitchen floor, leaning against the cabinet under the sink, and let the tears fall silently. It was there that I saw it. Under the front door, that crack where supermarket flyers sometimes pass, there was a white envelope. It had no stamp, no return address, just my name, written by hand in firm, masculine handwriting. Ms. Susan Eleonora Mendez. I crawled over there, picked up the envelope, opened it with that apathetic curiosity of someone who no longer expects anything good. Inside, a sheet of copy paper, and on it, just an address and a sentence. 7th Street, 847, Spokane, Washington, Pineview Care Home. If you want the truth about Vanessa Sampaio Miller, go to this place. A father was abandoned too. My heart raced for the first time in weeks. A father was abandoned too. Spokane, the same place Mr. Miller had mentioned, only I didn't know who Mr. Miller was yet. That would come later. In that moment, that letter was just a riddle. Who had sent me this? Why? How did they know what I was going through? And more importantly, what was in Spokane that could be the truth about Vanessa? I turned the paper over. Nothing. Just those lines. I grabbed my cell phone, that simple model I barely knew how to use, and typed the address into Google. It really was a nursing home. Pineview Care Home. 3-star rating. Comments complaining of negligence, lack of structure, rude staff. Why would someone send me to a nursing home in Spokane? I stayed awake all night with that paper in my hands. Something told me it was important, that a piece of the disaster was there. But I was so tired, so destroyed, that I couldn't think straight. The next morning, I called the public defender's office. My lawyer, who was already overloaded with my 2 cases, answered with the voice of someone who had 50 other people waiting. Miss Susan, about the hearing on the 19th, you need to appear. It is mandatory. If you don't do it, the judge can decide in default and— I am going, I interrupted. But I need to know, can I ask to investigate something? Information I received? Depends. What kind of information? I looked at the paper in my hand. A nursing home in Spokane, where supposedly there is something related to Vanessa. Silence on the line. Miss Susan, you need concrete evidence, not assumptions. If you go to the hearing with loose theories, it will worsen your situation. She was right. I knew she was. But that letter was the first spark of hope I had in months. I kept the paper in the box in my room, along with the old photos of baby David, along with the memories of what I once had. The days until the hearing passed in a gray blur. I barely left the house, barely ate, just waited, counting the hours. The night before, Tuesday, March 18th, I laid out my clothes. Black dress slacks, slightly faded, a beige long-sleeved blouse, closed shoes that hurt my feet but were the only presentable ones I had. My old umbrella, because the forecast was for rain. I couldn't sleep. I sat up, staring at the ceiling, imagining what it would be like to sit in front of that judge. What would I say? How would I defend myself from the accusations of being an inconvenient mother, a disturbed old woman? What if they really declared me incompetent? What if I lost everything? At 4 a.m, I got up, showered, got dressed, and at 5:30, I took that paper from the box and put it in my purse. I didn't know why. Maybe it was a talisman. Maybe it was just desperation. But when I got on that bus at 6:45 in the morning, with the rain soaking my shoulders and fear gripping my chest, I didn't imagine that piece of paper had been planted by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Someone who had also been destroyed by Vanessa, and who was waiting for the right moment to get revenge. The truth was on its way, and it had white hair, 75 years, and a past that was going to blow everything up. Stay with me. The rain started before the sun even rose, one of those fine, persistent autumn rains that soak you little by little, entering through the cuffs of your sleeves and dripping down your collar. The sky was lead gray when I locked the house gate at 6:15 in the morning. My purse weighed on my shoulder. Inside, the court documents, that mysterious paper with the Spokane address, and a wallet with exactly $43, all the money I had left in the world. The bus stop was 3 blocks away. I walked slowly, stepping in the puddles forming on the sidewalk. My old umbrella made a rhythmic noise, tap, 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 against the rain. There were more people at the stop than I expected for that hour. A boy in a security uniform, headphones in his ears, 2 women with kitchen aprons under their coats, a gentleman with a lunchbox in hand, all with that perpetual Monday face that only those who catch the early bus know, the 875 to the Central Court. It arrived at 6:40, full. Of course it was full. I pushed myself inside along with 5 other passengers. The driver, a heavy-set man with a gray mustache, grumbled something about waiting for the next one. I tapped my senior card on the reader. The beep sounded. I looked for a place to hold on when I heard the argument. Either pay or get off. I don't have all day. Come on. Near the turnstile, a white-haired gentleman stood, turning the pockets of his wet jacket inside out with growing desperation. He was tall, thin, must have been about 70-something. Well-cut gray suit, but soaked. Crooked navy blue tie, glasses with lenses fogged by the rain. I was sure I had change. He murmured, turning his pockets inside out. Some coins fell to the floor. 5, 10 cents. He bent down to pick them up, almost losing his balance. Wait, let me look. You already looked. Get off, you're holding everyone up. The people behind started to grumble. Go on, old man, you're making everyone lose time. I didn't think. I just approached. How much is missing? I asked the driver. $2.75, but it's not your problem, ma'am. It's okay, I'll pay. I took $5 out of my wallet, the last 5 loose dollars I had. I put it in the tray. The driver looked at me with surprise. Then he shrugged and accepted the money. Turnstile released. The gentleman turned to me. His eyes, brown, deep, heavy with weariness, shone with something that seemed to be much more than gratitude. You didn't have to. It's done. Go, get in. The driver is in a hurry. He passed through the turnstile. We stood there, holding on to the metal bars while the bus shook through the flooded streets. I'm Robert, he said after a while. Robert Miller, or Bob. Lawyer. Well, was. Retired now. Susan. We shook hands. His was warm, firm, the hand of someone who worked all his life with papers and pens. Thank you very much. I left without the right wallet. I was distracted. I looked at him better. The suit was good, but old. Shoes polished, but worn at the tips. And there was something in his face, a deep sadness, the kind that settles in and doesn't leave. Happens to everyone, I replied. The bus stopped. More people got on. We were squeezed against the window. He smelled of fennel soap and mothballs, the smell of clothes stored a long time ago. "Where are you going so early, ma'am?" he asked after a few minutes of silence. I hesitated. I don't know why, but something about that man made me trust him. "County Superior Court. I have a hearing at 10. He raised his eyebrows. "What a coincidence! Me too." "Seriously?" "Yes. I worked there for 40 years. I know every hallway, every room." He smiled sadly. "Never thought I would return there as an interested party in a lawsuit of my own." Something in his voice resonated with my own pain. "Family court?" I ventured. He looked at me with surprise. "How did you know?" I recognized the look. It is the same one I am carrying. We fell silent again, but it was a comfortable silence of two people who understand each other's weight without needing to explain it. The bus continued down the avenue. The rain had let up, but hadn't stopped. People started getting off at the downtown stops. We had more space. "Can I ask something a little invasive?" I said. "You can. Do you have family? Children?" His expression changed, became hard, distant. "I have a daughter, or had. I don't know what verb to use anymore." I knew that feeling well. Did you drift apart?" "She committed me to a clandestine nursing home 8 years ago, forged my death certificate, stole my inheritance, and disappeared." Each word came out loaded with ancient pain. "I managed to get out of there 7 months ago, and now I am suing her for abandonment of a vulnerable person, fraud, forgery." My heart accelerated. "What kind of person does that?" I asked, already sensing the answer. "A con artist. She has a pattern. Marries older men with assets, steals everything, disappears, restarts with another name in another place." He took a deep breath. "I spent the last few months gathering evidence. I found out she got married again, snared another victim." I could barely breathe. What is your daughter's name?" He turned completely to me, and that was when I saw the pain, the shame, the contained rage in his eyes. Vanessa Sampaio Miller. The world stopped. The bus continued moving, but I didn't feel the motion anymore. I didn't hear the sounds anymore. Only that name echoing in my head. "Are you okay?" Mr. Miller grabbed my arm. "You went pale." I took the paper from my purse with trembling hands, that mysterious paper. I showed it to him. Were you at the Pineview Care Home?" He widened his eyes. "How do you know that?" "Someone sent me this paper, last night, under my door." "But why? Do you know my daughter?" I swallowed hard. "She is my daughter-in-law." And in that moment, with the bus stopping at the final stop in front of the courthouse, with the rain pouring down heavily outside, two strangers looked at each other and understood. We were fighting the same snake, and destiny had just put us on the same bus. What happened when we walked into that courthouse together? Stay with me. The truth was about to explode. We got off the bus into the rain that was now falling with force. Mr. Miller opened a black umbrella he took from the leather briefcase he carried. He offered cover for me, too. We walked together to the courthouse entrance, a gray and imposing building with columns on the facade and that characteristic smell of old paper and anxiety that all courts have. He was explaining his legal strategy to me in a low voice, the documents he had gathered, the evidence against Vanessa, photos of the nursing home where he was kept prisoner, copies of the forged documents, bank records showing suspicious transfers. "I managed to track 3 previous marriages of hers," he said as we climbed the wet steps. "Always the same pattern. Widower or divorced man, significant assets, emotionally vulnerable. She enters, marries quickly, starts isolating the victim from the family. In less than 2 years, she has already transferred everything and disappears." Each word was an exact description of what was happening to me, or rather, to my son. "Why hasn't she disappeared yet?" I asked, "if this is the pattern." "Because this time she aimed too high. Your son has assets, but most are in properties that cannot be liquidated quickly. She needs time, and probably—" He paused. "She must be after your house, too." I felt a tightness in my chest. "She is. She tried to make me sell. When she couldn't, she forged documents to steal. Mr. Miller stopped walking. He turned completely to me, eyes wide. She forged the sale of your house? Tried to. The case is ongoing. My God. He looked away, wiped his glasses on his sleeve. It is the same modus operandi she used with me. Fake power of attorney, signature notarization bought at a corrupt notary. Borges notary, I ventured. He went pale. How do you know? That was where they notarized my fake signature. We stood there at the courthouse entrance. Two strangers who, an hour ago, didn't know each other, now united by a web of lies and crimes by the same person. We are going in together, he said firmly. What time is your hearing? 10 in the morning, room 4, second family court. Mine is noon, same court. He smiled, a smile without joy. How convenient. Vanessa is going to have to face me today. We went through the revolving doors. The lobby was full. Lawyers in suits talking in little groups, nervous people sitting on benches against the wall, clerks with piles of files in their arms. And that was where I saw him. David was standing near the elevators, checking his cell phone. He wore dark jeans and a white dress shirt, the same shirt I had ironed for him so many times when he lived with me. Beside him, Vanessa. She was impeccable, as always, wearing a black sheath dress up to the neck, beige pumps, that straight black hair perfectly brushed, expensive leather bag hanging on her shoulder, discreet makeup, but calculated to look natural. The personification of the worried and responsible wife. She saw us first, her eyes fixed on me, already expecting to see me alone, defeated, without a real lawyer. But then her gaze drifted to the man beside me, and I saw it. The color disappearing from her face in a second, her lips opening slightly in a silent "oh" of shock, her eyes widening so much you could see the white around the iris. Her whole body went rigid. The bag slipped from her shoulder, hit the floor with a dull thud. The cell phone that was in her hand fell too, the screen cracking on impact against the granite floor. But she didn't move to pick it up. She was frozen, looking at Mr. Miller as if she were seeing a ghost, because for her, he was a ghost. David noticed her reaction. Vic, what is it?" He followed his wife's gaze to us, frowned upon seeing me, then looked at the gentleman beside me with confusion. "Who is that?" Mr. Miller took a step forward, slow, deliberate. His posture changed, became erect, imposing. The lawyer who worked 40 years in that building resurfaced. "Hello, Vanessa," he said. The voice was calm, but loaded with a silent power. "It's been a while since we've seen each other, hasn't it? 8 years since you left me in that establishment." The word establishment came out like poison. Vanessa started shaking her head, small, frantic movements. "No," she whispered. Her voice came out hoarse, strangled. "No, it's not possible. You are dead. I saw it. I have the certificate." "The certificate you forged?" Mr. Miller completed. He pulled an envelope from the briefcase he carried. "I have a copy here, the fake signature of Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who, by the way, already confirmed in testimony she never treated me. Her medical license was used without authorization." David looked between his wife and that man, completely lost. "Vic, what is he talking about? What certificate? Who is this guy?" Mr. Miller turned to my son, and when he spoke, every word was a bomb. "I am Robert Miller, her father, and I am here to sue my daughter for abandonment of a vulnerable adult, fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement." He paused. "And apparently you, ma'am, your mother, are also a victim of the same crimes." The silence that fell was deafening. David went white. "Father? But, Vic, you told me your father had died when you were 20. Heart attack." "He lied," Vanessa exploded, suddenly recovering her voice. "He is a con artist. He is posing as my father to extort money. I don't know who this man is." "No," Mr. Miller raised his voice. Several people in the lobby stopped to look. "You don't know who I am? Then explain this here." He took more papers from the envelope. Photos. Passed them to David. They were old photos. A family at the beach. A younger man, recognizable as Mr. Miller, a brunette woman, and a blonde girl of about 8 years old. This photo was taken in Santa Monica, 1998. You were 8, Vanessa, remember? You fell off the bike and cried all afternoon. Vanessa backed up until she hit her back against the wall. Her hands were shaking. That proves nothing. Oh no? He showed another photo. Her birth certificate, civil registry. Vanessa Sampaio Miller, born May 3, 1991, daughter of Robert Miller and Marina Sampaio Miller, deceased. David looked at the papers, passing from one to another, reality starting to pierce the bag of lies Vanessa had built around him. "Vicky," his voice came out thin. "Vicky, is it true? Is this man your father?" She didn't answer. She just looked at Mr. Miller with a hatred so pure, so intense, that I felt a chill. And it was in that moment I understood. We weren't just fighting a con artist. We were fighting someone who had perfected the art of destroying families and who wasn't going to give up without a fight. The mask had fallen, but the confrontation was just beginning. Stay with me to see how it all unfolded in that courtroom. Vanessa tried to escape, right there in the courthouse lobby with dozens of people watching. She turned around and started running toward the exit, stumbling in those high heels. Mr. Miller didn't move. He just raised his hand and made a discreet gesture. 2 men in gray suits who were standing near the entrance, and whom I hadn't even noticed, moved quickly. They blocked the exit. One of them showed a badge. Police. "Ma'am, you need to stay, please. We have some questions." Vanessa stopped in the middle of the path, spun on her heels, looking around like a cornered animal. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. The veneer of a controlled woman had cracked completely. "This is a setup," she screamed, pointing at Mr. Miller. "You are all in on it. It is a conspiracy. David, do something." But David didn't move. He was standing in the same spot, clutching those photos, looking at them as if seeing his whole life crumble frame by frame. A court security officer approached. "Let's resolve this calmly. What time is your hearing, ma'am?" 10 o'clock, I replied, finding my voice. "Room 4. "Then let's go. Everyone involved, please." We went up in silence. Me, Mr. Miller, David stumbling behind us, Vanessa between the 2 police officers, and my public defender who had just arrived, running, completely lost about what was happening. The courtroom was small, stuffy, dark wooden table in the center, U.S. flag hanging crooked on the wall, old air conditioner making noise. The judge was already there, a woman of about 50, gray hair tied in a tight bun, reading glasses hanging on a chain around her neck. "Judge Sonia Marquez," said the nameplate on her desk. She looked at the confused group entering the room and frowned. "How many cases are being judged here today?" 2, Your Honor," answered Mr. Miller, "but they are deeply connected. With your permission, I would like to explain." The judge sighed, adjusted her glasses, and made a gesture to proceed. What happened in the next 40 minutes was a lesson on how to dismantle a lie built over years. Mr. Miller presented everything. And I mean everything. He had bank records showing how Vanessa had emptied his account before committing him. $320,000 transferred to ghost accounts. He had the fake nursing home contract, signed with a name that wasn't hers. He had recordings of nursing home staff confirming she paid in cash to keep him there, sedated and isolated. "My daughter visited me only once in those 8 years," he said, voice trembling but firm. "It was 3 days after committing me. She came into the room, looked at me, and do you know what she said? 'You have always been an obstacle. Now, at least, you're an obstacle out of the way,' and she left." David was seated in the chair beside me, white as paper. His hands shook. Mr. Miller continued. He showed Vanessa's 3 previous marriages, all to older men, all ending with the husbands mysteriously renouncing assets in leonine divorce settlements. Arnold Perry, businessman, 62, married her in 2015. 2 years later, signed divorce, ceding an apartment worth $250,000. Today, he lives in a rented room, without understanding how he signed those papers. Richard Foster, retired doctor, 58, married in 2017. 18 months later, transferred to her the share in a clinic valued at $400,000. He alleges he was coerced, that there were threats. Maurice Sampson, lawyer, 64, married in 2019. 1 year later, he was dead. Suicide, according to the report, but the family contests it to this day. Vanessa inherited everything. With each name, Vanessa shrank more in the chair. Her perfect French tips scratched the wood of the table. The judge looked at the documents with an increasingly somber expression. "And what does this have to do with the family separation case filed by Mr. David?" she asked. That was when my lawyer, thank God, found her voice. "Your Honor, the strategy is the same. Isolate the victim from the family. In this case, Ms. Susan's son. The petitioner filed a conservatorship process against my client, alleging senile dementia. Presented fake psychological reports. We are already investigating the professionals involved. Simultaneously attempted to force the sale of Ms. Susan's property through document forgery. The goal is clear. Remove any family support Mr. David has, facilitate financial and emotional control over him." David stood up from the chair abruptly. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know anything about this. Vanessa told me. She showed me messages, reports, convinced me my mother was sick." "Fabricated messages?" interrupted Mr. Miller. "It is another pattern of hers. She is an expert at manipulating digital conversations, creating fake screenshots. Did the same to me years ago. Convinced some distant relatives that I was senile." The judge turned to Vanessa. "Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Vanessa lifted her face, and what I saw there made me freeze. There was no more panic, no more fear, only a cold, calculating emptiness. "All this is the invention of a resentful old man and a mother-in-law who never accepted me," she said with artificial calm. "Yes, my father is alive. We drifted apart due to personal differences. He never accepted my relationships. As for the previous marriages, all were consensual, with legal divorces. And about Ms. Susan?" She looked at me with disdain. "She really presents signs of mental confusion. Any person close can confirm." "Any person you manipulated," I replied, standing up too. My voice came out stronger than I imagined being capable of. "You spread rumors about me, isolated me from my friends, turned me into the crazy woman of the story. But I never signed those documents, never authorized the sale of my house, and you know that." The judge banged the gavel on the table. Silence. "Everyone sit down." That was when one of the police officers stepped forward, handing a tablet to the judge. "Your Honor, we just received this from the detective in charge of the Pineview Care Home investigation." The judge watched something on the screen. Her face grew harder and harder. After 2 minutes, she paused the video and looked directly at Vanessa. "It is a security camera recording from the nursing home, dated August 2016. It shows you entering with a box full of cash, handing it to the administrator, already arrested by the way, and then leaving your father's room. In the recording, it is possible to clearly see Mr. Miller trying to get out of bed, being held back by 2 staff members while you just watch." The judge took off her glasses. "Is there anything you want to add?" The silence was absolute. And it was in that silence that Vanessa finally understood. It was over. The lies had crumbled. The house of cards had fallen, and there was no way to rebuild. But what happened next was even more shocking. Justice was about to act. Stay with me. Vanessa didn't answer the judge's question. She just stared at the tablet, at that frozen image on the screen, showing her in a nursing home hallway, clutching a box, with that cold expression I had seen so many times, but never fully understood until now. The judge closed the tablet and looked at the police officers. "Take her into custody, remand for fraud, forgery of public documents, abandonment of a vulnerable adult, and conspiracy. The district attorney will be notified immediately to present formal charges." It was as if someone had pressed play in slow motion. One of the officers approached Vanessa with the handcuffs. She looked at the shiny metal as if she didn't understand what was happening, or maybe because she never imagined this day would come. "No," she said, backing away in the chair. "No, you can't. I have rights. and you will exercise them at the precinct," replied the officer with a firm voice. "Please, stand up and put your hands behind your back." Vanessa turned to David with a desperation that, for the first time, seemed genuine. "David, baby, do something. Call the lawyer. Don't let them take me. I am your wife. I am your wife." My son was sitting, motionless, staring at his own hands. The photos Mr. Miller had shown were still scattered on the table in front of him, evidence of a whole life of lies. "David," screamed Vanessa louder, "look at me! Look at me!" He lifted his face slowly, and when he spoke, his voice came out hollow, empty. You made me sign a document calling my mother crazy." Each word seemed to hurt him. "You made me sue her, made me believe she was sick, and I believed you. God in heaven, I believed you." "Because you love me," screamed Vanessa. Tears began to fall, but they weren't tears of regret. They were tears of rage, of frustration at having been caught. "Because we are a family. Everything I did was for us." "For us?" David gave a bitter laugh. "You tried to steal my mother's house. You dumped your own father in a nursing home. You married 3 times before me, 3 times, and left all the men in misery. What part of that was for us?" Vanessa had no answer. She just continued looking at him with that expression of someone who lost control of the narrative. The officer didn't wait any longer, grabbed her arm firmly, and put the handcuffs on. The click of the metal closing echoed in the small room like a gate slamming. "Vanessa Sampaio Miller, you are under arrest. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you. You have the right to an attorney." They started leading her out. She resisted, dragging her feet on the cold floor of the room. "You will regret this," she shouted, looking at Mr. Miller and me. "I will get out. I will get out, and you will pay for this. All of you." The door closed behind her, and suddenly the room fell silent. The judge took a deep breath, took off her glasses, and massaged the bridge of her nose. 40 years presiding over hearings," she murmured, more to herself than to us, "and I am still surprised by the human capacity for cruelty." She looked at me. "Ms. Susan, all lawsuits filed against you, conservatorship, family separation, are immediately suspended and will be dismissed. You will have the right to compensation for pain and suffering. My clerk will be in touch." Then she addressed Mr. Miller. "Mr. Miller, your lawsuit against your daughter will be combined with the criminal case. The district attorney is already informed. She will lose her assets and power over any decision of yours, and the appropriated property will be restituted after evaluation." Mr. Miller nodded, but didn't smile. There was no joy in it, only a deep relief of someone who fought too long. And then the judge looked at David, who was still sitting, head down, shoulders slumped. "Mr. David, you were a victim of systematic psychological manipulation. That does not erase what you signed, the lawsuits you filed against your mother, but the court recognizes you were emotionally coerced. I strongly suggest you seek psychological counseling." David didn't answer, just continued staring at nothing. The hearing was closed. People started to leave. My lawyer squeezed my hand, whispered something about finally justice, and left with a stack of documents. Mr. Miller approached me. His eyes were watering. "Thank you," he said simply. "If you hadn't paid my fare today, if you hadn't walked me here," I replied, "I would have faced this alone and probably would have lost." We hugged. 2 strangers' destiny united on a rainy morning, now connected forever by this battle. When we pulled apart, David was still sitting in the same chair, immobile. Bob looked at him, then at me, and whispered, "I'll wait outside. You two need to talk." He left, closing the door softly behind him. I stood there, looking at my son, my only son, the boy I carried, nursed, taught to walk, the man who had signed papers calling me incompetent. "David," he didn't lift his face. "David, look at me." Slowly he lifted his eyes. They were red, swollen. He had cried or was holding back tears with all his might. "I don't know what to say," he whispered. "I don't know how. How I was so blind. How I let her. She was good at what she did." I interrupted. My voice was calmer than I expected. "She studied you, found your vulnerabilities, your loneliness after losing Sarah, your desire to start over, and used all that. But I signed those papers, Mom. I called you crazy. I abandoned you when you needed me most." I sat in the chair next to him, took his hand, that hand I held when he was 5 years old and afraid of the dark. "You were wrong," I said. "You were wrong badly. You hurt me in a way that will take time to heal." He sobbed. "But you are my son, and I am not going to do to you what Vanessa did to her father. I am not going to abandon you." David broke down, put his head on my shoulder, and cried like he hadn't cried since he was a boy. Cried for everything he lost, for everything he almost destroyed, for the woman he thought he knew, but who never really existed. And I just held him, because even after everything, even with all the scars, he was still my son. And real family doesn't abandon each other. Real family fights. Real family forgives, but forgives on its own terms. But the story doesn't end here. 3 months later, everything had changed. Stay to know how we rebuilt our lives after the storm. 3 months after that hearing, my life had changed completely, but not in the way you imagine. It wasn't a fairy tale ending where everything went back to how it was before, because some things, when they break, don't go back to the original shape. They rebuild into something new, sometimes stronger, sometimes crooked, but always different. Vanessa was sentenced to 6 years in prison. Qualified fraud, forgery of public documents, abandonment of a vulnerable adult, and criminal association. Her brother Richard was also arrested. The notary clerk who notarized my fake signature lost her license and faced criminal charges. The house went back to my name. Completely clean, no liens, no pending issues. That feeling of sitting in the living room and knowing no one could take me out of there is priceless. We managed to recover $47,000 that Vanessa had siphoned from my account over the months. Small transfers I hadn't even noticed. The money came back. It wasn't everything, but it was dignity back. Mr. Miller, or Bob as I call him now, became a true friend. We review documents together, have coffee every Tuesday morning. He taught me that forgiving doesn't mean forgetting or accepting disrespect. It means releasing the poison before it kills you from the inside. When David showed up at my door with a suitcase, asking to move back in because he had sold their apartment, I did something hard. I said no. I told him I loved him, but he needed to learn to stand on his own 2 feet, go to therapy, and earn back my trust slowly. Today, my house is peaceful. My blue willow china is safe in the cabinet, and my son visits every 2 weeks, healing a little more each time. If I hadn't helped that stranger on the bus, I might have lost everything, proving that sometimes a single act of kindness saves the giver just as much as the receiver. While Susan's story is fiction, the pain of family manipulation is real for many. Remember that true love always comes with respect, never with a price tag on your dignity.